Hello, hello, hello. I'll give it for a minute for everybody to arrive, as well as Sam. Hello. Welcome to the first episode of 2 Pints of English. We're going to give it a few moments. Sam should be with us in just a few moments. There he is. You're also okay?
Oh, Lance, what's up?
Hello.
Doing well. How are you?
How are you?
It's been a long time since we've had a chat and a pint.
Yeah, sort of, things have happened around the world.
Yeah.
Stopped it, really.
Well, it's nice to get back to a sense of normalcy. I'm pouring myself this beer from Riga, apparently. Very, very official looking. What have you got in your glass?
I am starting with...
Oh, my God.
I've never tried this. It's called Gross Money. But it has a weird elephant, like a Dali elephant, so I bought it mainly because...
Marketing works.
Design, essentially. It does. So, welcome, everybody, to 2 Pints of English, the very first episode. Where basically we're just going to have a chat, talk about random stuff, talk about the differences between America, England, and talk a little bit about English learning on top. So quite nice and rounded, whilst we get
just a little
slightly intoxicated.
By English, most, right? By the academic conversation.
Just a little. First of all, most people should know who I am. I'm from England, the southwest of England, not too far away from Stonehenge in Somerset. I've been living here for about 7 years now, so I'm quite a veteran, but not quite as much as you.
Sure,
yeah. Brief introduction.
I, like Lance, have been here a little bit longer. I think I've got just a couple more months on your stay in Russia. I'm originally from the United States, from the East Coast, just about 20 minutes north of Washington, D.C. I grew up in the great state of Maryland, which I think abroad no one knows anything about unless they've watched The Wire, and they would think, oh, is it like The Wire? And I'm like, not where I grew up, but I know Baltimore too.
Yeah, I mean, the UK's famous connection to Maryland is cookies. We just have Maryland cookies.
Is that a brand? Is that a type of...
Yeah, it's like
interesting. It's come back. Yeah. Maryland was founded as a refuge for Catholics, Catholic colonists, and no.
And now...
we're not really doing that anymore. But it's a wonderful place, actually. Maryland is, its official nickname is America in Miniature. So you get a little bit of everything. You have countryside, you've got big cities, you've got suburban areas, you have a wonderful coast. The Chesapeake Bay is there. I think there might even be pockets of Native American communities there. And you have easy access to the other great cities on the East Coast, like New York, Philadelphia, etc.
So that was one question people wanted to know. They asked on the top 5 places to visit in your country.
Maybe you should start with that one. I think the number one place people want to visit in England is the Harry Potter platform to take you to Hogwarts.
Yeah,
is that a real place? Can you confirm whether or not you can?
Yeah, and you'll see people queuing up for ages to go through. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but there's like a Harry Potter world, like a little mini sort of theme park. I mean, yeah, London obviously is a top place to visit, but at the same time, it's not England. It's like its own separate entity. I visited London, and let's say, yeah, I know all about England. I spent 2 weeks in London. It's completely different. London's great, especially when you're young. There's always something new and exciting to do. Obviously, another place I'd recommend, just out of bias, would be Somerset.
That sounds familiar. I feel like you've mentioned that in conversation before. Tell me about what's in Somerset for the people.
Well, it's basically like proper postcard England. So when you see all the rolling hills and all the beautiful countryside, this is essentially Somerset. Very, very famous for cheddar cheese. It's where it's actually made, as well as cider.
I think that's definitely
cider.
worth visiting then.
Yeah, exactly. Further down the coast, if you keep going down, there's Cornwall, which, believe it or not, we do actually have a few.
Now that is definitely news to me. I imagine.
Yeah, 4 or 5. It's not like a huge amount, but yeah, very, very beautiful beaches down in the southwest. I would recommend possibly the Lake District. Again, very sort of postcard England, lots of beautiful lakes, hills. One more. Manchester. I was wanting to see a big city that isn't London.
Sure, that's understandable. Well, is Cornwall, that's where the people are Cornish, right? That's a whole other kind of ethnicity and language.
Yeah, they kind of want to separate quite a lot, to be honest. They keep trying to force to be their own sort of region, much as Scotland done. It's kind of interesting. Most of the UK is trying to separate, except Wales.
They're the loyal ones. It's interesting, right? Because everywhere outside of the UK, everywhere outside of England, I feel like has a very positive association with English culture, with English people. They all want to travel there. They want to learn the accent. But their closest neighbors are like, please go.
We don't want you.
I was very interested in Scottish independence, but that was like what, 7, 8 years ago. That was on the ballot.
Yeah, they keep pushing for that, but I don't think it'll ever really go ahead. But kind of interesting. But I always feel sorry for Wales. It's like an neglected part of the UK, and it's very, very beautiful. I know in the US there's like a whole
That's right.
There's
a very large population, we could say, of people who are descended from the Irish fairly recently too, just within the last, well, I would say recently, like the last 4 or 5 generations. And I think Irish people who came to the US, they really held on to why they came. A lot of them were fleeing famine, persecution, violence, etc. Sometimes at the hands of the English or of the Northern Irish, the authorities there. And I think that for people, more recent immigrants especially, there's a huge cultural clash in what they can expect. So something that I know I haven't really experienced, but I know that in the islands, in the UK and in Ireland, pub culture is really important. People go to pubs, and this is the town square with booze. And you talk about everything, art, politics, family, whatever. And in the US, we have a very different culture when it comes to what you talk about in public. And getting into a heated debate about politics will usually end an unpleasant situation in the States. But my friend's dad, who's from Northern Ireland, he just couldn't believe how, let's use a Russian expression, how much water there was in small talk and conversation in the US, whereas he wanted to really get into controversial social issues. They weren't having it. I could tell you all sorts of stories about my friend's Irish dad, but yeah, everyone's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, even people whose names have never had a vowel in front of a consonant at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I guess we're not too different from sort of how it is here in Russia. It's like politics is our go-to conversation in pubs. It's kind of strange. When I go for a drink, I like to keep it light and happy normally. So what would you recommend to visit if anyone's going to the US?
See, I don't know if I have that many insights. I've traveled all over. So, I mean, there are 2 big cities, right? The 2 biggest. New York, definitely visit New York. And if you're Russian and you feel homesick, go to Brighton Beach on New York, which is basically like a Russian outpost there. The last time I was in New York, actually, my friend's wife, who is Russian, gave me some Olivier and some chorny chlieb to enjoy, to prepare me for my trip. So that's lovely. I love New York. I have a lot of friends there. Los Angeles is worth seeing because it's quite ridiculous compared to life in St. Petersburg. People sometimes have this idea like, oh, Los Angeles, it's just always sunny and it's always warm and everyone's fit and beautiful. And I'm like, well, I lived in Los Angeles, and yeah, that's basically it. It's like Disneyland's the whole year. You have a couple months of rain and such. But it's neat to see a world like that where you pay $1.25 and you are at the beach or at the Pacific Ocean. Your neighbor is the Pacific Ocean. Really beautiful. I remember reading lots of books, having lots of dinners, just staring out with that being my companion, which speaks, trust me, more to the ocean's beauty than my social ineptitude. Let's see. Chicago is a great city, and I guess it's worth seeing if you like the Midwest. My favorite city, though, is Minneapolis. I think if any of my former students or friends are here, they'll know that I love Minneapolis. That's where Prince is from. It's where my good friend, who's actually from St. Petersburg, he's American now. He lives in Minneapolis. My favorite place to visit. They have wonderful pub culture there. They have beautiful, strong winters, really kind and civil people, and also very diverse. I've never met so many Somalis in my life as I met in Minneapolis. No Somalis. Well, I tell you, next time I go to the States, if you want to tag along, we can do a little United Nations hopping.
We did talk about that a while back. I was going to show you UK.
This was a possibility before times. But before what at this point, right? Like, so many things have happened. So I think I've got 3 cities, right? I got New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. Visit New Orleans. If you want an unorthodox American experience, visit New Orleans. New Orleans has at different times been run by indigenous people to the U.S., the Spanish, the French, the English, American colonists. It is a wonderful melting pot of some cultures you might not even associate with the U.S. today. The Cajun people, as a matter of fact, these are French refugees from Canada who were kicked out by the English in a really brutal campaign.
We weren't. English weren't good in history. Everyone sort of
they're like the hats were just so powerful.
How came out?
But yeah, I'd say go eat in New Orleans. Probably the best food in America. And if there's one more place to visit, I'd say maybe go somewhere like in the middle of nowhere. Visit a state like Utah or South Dakota where it's just empty. And it might be empty with grassland, or it might be empty like a Martian landscape. But having driven through these places, having stayed in them at least overnight, it's a really disorienting and humbling experience. I remember visiting Murmansk and seeing the Northern Lights and thinking, wow, human beings that first saw the sky here must have just had this amazing experience of the grandeur of the universe and the smallness of the self. If you can't make it to Murmansk, you can still see the big sky in Montana. So go for it. No nuclear weapons. So, actually, that's
so what would be the one place to avoid in the US?
Oh, God. Maybe you should go first. Places to avoid. I'm going to have a hard time thinking of one place to avoid.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky. I mean, the most run-down city I've ever seen is in the north of England. It's Bolton. And oh my God, it was just like the Great Depression was still going on. Everything was grey, boarded up. It was just dirty. Nothing was functional. It was depressing the second you step off the train. So yeah, it's not one of those most exciting places. The north has got a lot more developed over the past 20 or 30 years. Some wonderful, wonderful places. I mean, you've got Yorkshire, which is, again, like beautiful countryside. You've got Manchester, Liverpool. But there's still a lot of run-down, neglected areas during the Thatcher years. People think that we love Margaret Thatcher. No. English people hated her. Unless if you are a rich middle-class conservative.
I'm not even English, and I hate Margaret Thatcher. I sang God Save the Queen after she died at karaoke as kind of a...
Well, when she died, the #1 song in the UK was Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. People rushed out and bought it, make it #1.
That's from the Wizard of Oz?
A good person.
Isn't it that song? So it's a little bit of cross-continental solidarity there.
There it is.
You know what I would actually say? This might be kind of troubling for many Russians to hear, but I hear a lot of people, they like to visit Florida. They like to visit Miami. And I feel like you've got Sochi. You know, if you want to go to a sunny beach with lots of tourists and a place where you can, enjoy a lazy day in the sun, you can do that locally. What I think is interesting is to go to parts of America that, that aren't maybe in my top 5 even. Visit a state like West Virginia. There are people there who have never met anybody outside of their town, outside of their family. But I don't say this in a belittling way. It's just a different way of life. There are parts of the U.S. where you can't buy alcohol to this day. There are still dry counties. There are states where the government actually controls all alcohol sales. So just imagine the people are going to be a little bit different, the way that they interact with drinks and also with strangers. I could tell some pretty off-color jokes about Appalachia. Maybe that'll come up a little later. But yeah, another beer, a couple of beers to remove my visa so I don't get in trouble if I go back. But one of the last things I did in the U.S. on the East Coast before moving to the West Coast was visiting a historical site in West Virginia where John Brown tried to basically start the Civil War several years before it actually started. And it was really incredible just hearing how people talk, hearing what they knew and didn't know about history, the way they interacted with one another. And also some of the looks I got, I think, from the locals. They weren't used to seeing someone of my volume and color there. But, you know, I'm glad I went. I would gladly go back to really beautiful, beautiful landscape there in West Virginia.
I mean, I think that's really important. When I go traveling, I love to see new culture. Much like, as you said, the Russians, they go to Florida, same as the English. If this person normally goes to America, it's got 3 destinations: California, New York, or Florida. And Florida is like my version of hell. Like, I don't know why
would you. But you can go to France, right? If you're English and you want to sit on a beach, I would gladly rather go to France and embarrass myself trying to speak French than being embarrassed not knowing Florida slang or failing to remember my Spanish to order, you know, a margarita or something down there. Yeah, that's definitely not my number one destination.
I mean, that's really interesting what you said. Like, you can go to France. I don't know if it's just old history and we kind of have this kind of rivalry of France, but many people I know from England have never been to Paris. You could get a train. It takes like 2 hours. But they refuse to go. Yet the rest of the world will spend thousands to fly over to see the Eiffel Tower. We always look further than our doorstep, I guess. But yeah, France is a very, very neglected.
Also, very few immigrants from France in the U.S. I mean, outside of legacy populations from the 1800s, there you don't really see much of a legacy outside of a handful of pockets in New England, of all places, and in New Orleans. There's a little bit of French influence, but you know, I think maybe some of our guests here are a little young for this, but the U.S. also has a contemporary rivalry with France, despite the fact that they helped win the Revolutionary War to gain independence from England. In 2003, the U.S. very famously invaded Iraq. And France was at the fore of trying to stop this at the United Nations and diplomatically just savaging the, now we know, totally fabricated case for war. We're going to keep it light, right? And, you know, we had... there was actually a motion to rename French fries, right? Freedom fries, which sounds like a joke that someone would make, a satire of America.
Yeah, that sounds like
definitely happened. I remember in the government, in the halls of Washington, if you went to the cafeteria, you could order freedom fries, which makes me think, you know, I'll just have a yogurt. I don't want to participate with this. Can you think of anything like that from England? Like something just so silly and embarrassing? Yeah, of course not. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not really like super patriotic, which is weird. I mean, although you see the Jubilees going on, you got millions of people in the streets, most people don't care about the Royals at all. Most people are more excited by the fact we get an extra day off.
There we go.
An extra day in the pub. For most people in the UK, the Queen is the same as Big Ben. It's just a tourist.
Big Ben does nothing more, to be fair. Just
but yeah, I mean, we're not really patriotic in the slightest, except there's like football season. We don't care. Like, it's something that I've noticed about the US, a fascination with the flag, and it must never touch the ground. And yeah, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, you know about the
If you,
Pledge of Allegiance. Are you familiar with this ritual?
yeah, we
Every
do
day
it
at
like
school.
every day
Yeah.
at school or something.
I showed it to some Russians and they were absolutely horrified. They thought it was something from Nazi Germany. Uh, it's pretty
It's like a
disturbing.
cult.
And in case anyone who's listening doesn't know, the Pledge of Allegiance, it's a ritual every morning in American public schools where everyone stands up and they put their hand on their heart and they look at an American flag because every classroom has one. Every classroom has an American flag hanging. And they say, let's see, well, if I can do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, which was added in the 1950s. It didn't used to be there. One nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. I think that's it. And at one point, I learned that I didn't have to say it, and I was like, "Oh, screw that! I'm never saying that again. That's ridiculous."
Oh. Yeah, we have nothing like that in the UK schools. I can't even remember seeing a UK flag in any of the schools or colleges I went to.
I didn't even know the English flag existed until fairly recently. I only knew the Union flag.
Yeah, everyone knows the UK flag, but the English flag is quite underwhelming, to be honest. So, just red. If anyone that doesn't know, it's just a white background with a red cross on it. That is the English flag. I remember getting like a little bit annoyed during the World Cup when it was here in Russia because you saw all the flags in the country and then there was a UK flag. Like, that's not England.
You're like,
that's
I don't want any
England.
Northern Irish people on the pitch. Right.
Well, I mean, they're separate teams. They all compete separately. But they have the Scottish, they have the Northern Irish, and then it's like,
and maybe they're making some statement, right? But this is there's a name for this, right? It's called the West Lothian question about democracy in England. Oh, really? Yeah.
I've never heard of
Wikipedia surfing one day, and David Cameron, who I think is going to go down as one of the most inept prime ministers in history, he actually campaigned on it a little bit. Big disaster. What's that? He is.
I mean, Boris is doing a good job.
It might be like one after the other, really, really bad conservative PMs. But the West Lothian question is basically the idea that there is basically federalism for the other constituent parts of the UK. Like there are representatives in the UK Parliament, and there's also devolved governance there, where in England it doesn't quite have that. It's all kind of mixed together. So you have Scottish people voting on laws that are going to affect perhaps only English people. And something should be done about this, right? It's like it's almost like the US system, but not exactly. And when I first heard that, it was one of those times where I was like, right, they don't have a written constitution there. They're just making stuff up as they go along. And, you know, and I think it's a very legitimate thing for English people to be concerned. I mean, you have a queen, for God's sake, right? Like, get rid of that first. But
yeah, there's a lot going on there. It's weird we have these weird old traditions left. Let's move on to another question.
Sure.
One of the followers asked, what do you miss most from
guns?
You mean you want more guns?
I go to sleep hugging my pillow and I'm like, I just really wish this were an assault rifle like I grew up with. It's a tough one. Yeah,
satire, by the way.
Other English teachers from America might sincerely say that, but not me. What do I miss most? I mean, really, it would have to be my friends, because I think that material life is just as good, if not better, for me here in St. Petersburg. I've been able to, live very comfortably. I have a very nice work-life balance for the most part. But I don't have the chance to see the people I grew up with, the people who've informed my character and whose character I've influenced. I don't get to see their kids. My God, like a whole classroom worth of children has been born to my friends over the last few years. I've never met them. So that's kind of a bummer. How about you?
Food. Don't get me wrong, I like the family. They're very good, but food.
Fish and chips?
I miss spicy food. I miss raw cheeses, proper cider. I mean, you kind of adapted to Russian food quite well. You kind of like
That's right.
Russian cuisine. Myself,
have you tried to? Because a lot of people know that you have experience working as a chef and managing restaurants. Have you tried to make any Russian cuisine since you've been here?
I don't know. I don't think so, actually. I don't know, because I just prefer other
like,
cuisine.
If I really want the borscht, I can. There's a babushka down the hall.
Yeah, I can just go and get it. I'm sure I have, but I can't think from the top of my head what I've done. We have a question in the chat. Why did both of us move to Russia? I mean, me, it's just circumstances. I actually have a son here, so surprise! That was my wife. More than planning on visiting here. It's like, ta-da!
Oh man!
What about yourself?
Well, this is actually my second time in Russia. I studied abroad here for a semester in college, and that was a really great experience. I had lots of great discussions and excursions and learning experiences. I felt that I really grew as a person when I was 21 years old. And after 10 years in the States, I basically got bored. Life there wasn't interesting. So I thought I'd go back to the place where I felt that I grew the most. And also teaching English was something I'd been interested in for a while. And I just knew if I ever got certified, I would come back to Russia. And that's been that. And since I've been here, I've accomplished almost all of my goals. I've seen almost everything that I wanted to see. So yeah, almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years at the end of August, I think.
So that's quite impressive. Is your wife
no, question to Lance. I give off the most unmarried vibes.
Yeah.
That's not. No.
So there's no chance. No way, possibly. Yeah, I mean, you've explored quite a bit of Russia, where for me, I was just sort of jumping between Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Exactly the opposite of what a Russian would recommend. They would say, don't stay in Russia. Don't go to St. Petersburg and Moscow.
Yeah, I remember before I was looking for a trip to Lake Baikal, and just a plane ticket there was the same as 2 weeks in Italy, including flights and accommodation. It was like big water or pizza.
Man, that's a real challenge. Because I've been to Baikal. I paid the 33,000 rubles a few years ago to go, and I loved it. Before recent events, I really thought this would be a wonderful place for me to just live, spend the rest of my life. Baikal is beautiful. I highly recommend seeing it. It's so quiet. It's so lovely. It's so vast. The locals there are very friendly. I haven't met an English-speaking tour guide there. And when I travel in Russia, I try not to speak English too much. I generally prefer speaking Russian, which I can do to some, low to moderate extent. But one morning I was so tired from the trip, the flight to Baikal, the cab rides, the managing of trains. I just opened the door to this excursion hut and I was like, you speak English? And the guy said, yes, I do. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what can I do here? And he recommended that I go take a horseback or a dog sled ride, which I did. I took a husky sled ride. Yeah.
Like the local Uber. Yeah.
Like, man, my husky is taking forever. I should have.
So it's like the horseback like economy and husky kind of like
that's the classier version, exactly. I remember sitting on the sled and I was just like I was sitting like I was evacuating a plane like this. And the guy, he grabbed my hand and he put it on the sled on one of the bar, and he was like, "Держи," and I was like, "Oh, hold on, I'll never forget that. That's good."
I mean, yeah, you have like dived into the Russian culture a lot more than me. You're kind of embracing the food, the language, traveling around.
In 2005, I should have brought it, but it does exist.
I've been meaning to explore more, and I will do at some point, but it's just getting around it. Let's talk one more question about the UK and US, and we'll start talking a little bit about English. What is the most common misbelief about America that you hear?
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but people don't realize the level of social inequality in the US. Because a lot of what's marketed and a lot of what is popular is about the very rich, and it's also rather trashy. So unlike in England, right, when you look at the very posh, the very wealthy, these people really carry themselves with a degree of formality, and they really show off their education and their languages and such. Whereas the Kardashians, come on. Yeah, so you have these seemingly relatable pop culture figures who are also insanely wealthy. And I think people are like, oh, well, anyone can be that. Like, no, anyone can't be that. Your father needs to be an extremely expensive lawyer, or you need to be descended from blue bloods to live that kind of lifestyle. And a point that I keep coming back to when talking about this issue is I want to say in 2008, I think there's a presidential election where the Republican candidate, the conservative party in the US, the Republican candidate Mitt Romney said in the debate that we actually have less social mobility than England does today. This is, 10, 15 years ago. And I'm thinking, they literally have people with titles. Like, that's illegal in the US. You cannot have a title of royalty, of kingship, etc. Like, you can't do it. It's against the law. And
you can literally buy a title online in like 5 minutes. I could become baron if I wanted to.
You might like look into it. I think that might be good for branding, if nothing else. Lance Pro English of English. You're like, what does that even mean? So I'd say it's that. There's a high level of social inequality and economic problems. So, it is easy to start a business in the US, more or less. And if you've got a lot of, gumption to go out and get investors and such, you can do that. It does have this entrepreneurial quality, but that's absolutely not the story for most people. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Wages have stagnated over the last several decades. Unions are quite weak. Social solidarity, you can see in the news, has a lot of problems. So the marketing of sunny all the time, land of opportunity, we're all friends minus the mass shootings, not accurate.
I think the biggest one in the UK is it has to be the accent. The fact that everybody believes we're these kind of toffs, blue bloods walking around. Like, oh, good morn. How
good
are
morrow,
you?
sir.
Perchance, do you have a spare pound? It's like, oh my God, no, we don't speak like this. Like, please.
Are there real people that sound like this, or is it just in the movies?
There are very, very few, and they're only born into money, incredibly rich. And the pushback I always get is like, but I hear it on TV. And I mean, we call this kind of like the BBC English. I don't know if you know the history behind BBC English or RP. Basically, when we started first broadcasting on the radio and was going to do the whole way across the UK, people didn't understand each other. And so they fired every single Scottish person. No
R.I.P.
And we kind of invented this kind of like fake English accent, so it would be broadly understood. But at the same time, it's not natural in the slightest. You only hear it on TV. And so when I sort of travel around and people like really working on their English pronunciation, when they speak in this accent, instantly I'm like, they're not native. Like, and it's weird because they spend so much time and money and effort to sound less native than what it is.
One of America's great gifts to the world is rap music. And one of the great traditions in rap music is the rap battle, when rappers have beef with each other to criticize each other's skills and performance. And I feel like when it comes to pronunciation, and especially where that overlaps with culture and expectations, I've got a lot of beef with English teachers, especially on Instagram, especially when it comes to this accent, because I've known you now 7 years. I've understood 99% of what you have said. A couple times they'll use an expression that maybe I don't know, but I always understand the English that we share, the lexicon that we share. And when I watch these videos where people are teaching students that it's very important to try to approximate, number one, an accent that has no cultural history. Number two, that sounds artificial. And number three, will actually assist in you failing to understand other people. It's just infuriating. I mean, for one example, if I think you've probably seen some of the videos I've posted. There's the one where I have the Russian English teacher, and she says, you've got to pronounce words like la, rather than letter. And there's this silly idea that, well, if you pronounce the T's in a word like Letter, if you pronounce them like D's, this is somehow uneducated or non-standard, etc. And I remember very clearly being a child and knowing which kids in my class could read and speak effectively, because if we read aloud, a kid would say like, and the postman brought the letters to the house. And I'm just thinking, who do you talk to that sounds like that? Nobody speaks like that. It's letter. It's definitely letter. It could be letter if, you know, you're from that part of England where that's how they pronounce it. But it's that part.
Yeah,
like, that's just some...
I mean, it's really interesting to sort of talk about this point because they spend so much time and think it's going to improve their English test when they're doing like CAE, CPE, IELTS, whatever it is. They think they're going to get a better score because they're over enunciating absolutely everything. What I find with a lot of that is they're actually breaking fluency. There's no connected speech. There's no, I mean, all the English exams are looking for connected speech of sounding native. So, hello. What good day it is. Dropping all the articles. I'm like, oh, no,
I'm going to board the train. I'm planning to alight at 6 in the morning. And you're like, ugh, maybe eat some fiber. You sound terrible.
I mean, it's there's such a wide range of UK accents, and people should embrace them a little bit more. I'm not saying you should speak like them. I agree. You keep your accent, build your fluency, tempo, everything else, but keep your accent.
Exactly right. You. This is I noticed this when there are audio samples from Russian speakers or people with Eastern European accents. I've seen students even laugh at how they sound, and I'm like, they're speaking perfectly fluently, you know.
I can understand them better than
fake
people
RP,
speaking the fake
no
RP,
chunking,
basically.
No intonation. That's another one, you know. And in the U.S. itself, I mean, we have a lot of famous accents as well. I'm from Maryland. I've what's called like a mid-Atlantic accent. It's pretty general. It's pretty flat. Canadians, for the most part, kind of sound like this. People who read the news, same thing in the U.S. By the way, a lot of our newscasters are Canadian because that accent is so neutral that everyone can understand it.
For those that don't know, Sam's actually a very talented voice actor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to indulge them and give them a few different US accents, because just like the UK, there's multiple.
Well, yeah. So there are a few words that differ widely depending on where you go. So if you're talking about maybe visiting a small river, a small stream, you might say, let's go to the creek, C-R-E-E-K. That's how I said it growing up. But just 10, 15 minutes away from where I grew up, people are like, let's go on down to the creek. Same word, C-R-E-E-K, but they pronounced it like crick, like cricket. And then if you go to the upper Midwest in Minnesota, which is my favorite part of the country, people, they talk with this really kind of gentle, kind of sing-songy accent, don't you know? If you know the cartoon Bobby's World, the mom has this accent quite pronounced. Canadians kind of have this as well. And then got your Sam Elliott down in Texas or down in Louisiana in the bayou, and you go down to the swamp to make a living hunting gators. That's really not what people in New York talk like. People in New York are really fast. They talk really fast. They want to get to the point. They want to go. They want to do their business. They want to go on their date. They want to go to their meeting. They want to get things done. Just really, really fast. As a matter of fact, when I was acting in Houston, the play that I was in took place in Chicago. And the director said to us, and I found this kind of insulting, she said, maybe some of us are from the South, which I'm not. But she said, but this play is in Chicago, so we need to be fast. It's a fast northern play. And it just made me appreciate the fact that there are environmental and cultural differences when it comes to different parts of the U.S. that you can tell very quickly where someone is from. And that's fine because we are from different places.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear because in so many people's minds, you have an American accent and a British accent. And when people contact me, it's like, can you teach me the British
Welsh accent? Probably the best.
What? Yeah, what do you want exactly? A little bit more specific right there. What do you think is the most common mistake you notice with students here? What's the one thing you would say, like, stop doing this and you will definitely be better?
Well, this is an interesting one. I've thought about this a lot, whether I should go with something technical, like something with articles or modals, or something attitudinal. And I think I'm going to go with the attitudinal, something that has to do with your approach to learning. And I think the biggest mistake is you don't have an aim, that students don't have a goal. So wanting to get a good score on the IELTS is not really a goal in itself. I can teach you that in 20 minutes. It's not hard. The IELTS, which I'm quite experienced in teaching, it tells you everything at once. You know, it takes no rocket science, no magic. You don't need to go to Hogwarts. You don't have to cast a spell to do well in the IELTS. But what do you want to do once you've done that? Do you want to study in a university? Well, then you need to become familiar with academic English. You need to start reading scientific papers in English. You need to start watching presentations at a higher level than TED Talks. And you need to practice talking about this content with someone who can understand it. Is your goal tourism? And for a lot of people it is. And what they miss is you don't really need a very high level of English in order to effectively use it and to get around. I've had students who are pre-intermediate, intermediate, travel all over the world, not go to English-speaking countries, but use English to get around. I had a student go to Brazil, and she came back. She survived. You know, and her English was absolutely not great. Her vocabulary wasn't huge. She didn't have a great technical mastery, but it was enough for her goals, which is fine, right? Your teacher can help you reach the goals that you have. But if you come in and just say, I want to be fluent, that doesn't really mean anything. Do you want to talk to people? Do you want to write? Do you want to read? Do you want to act? What is this language for? Because it's a tool, and English is a communicative tool. So I think to put all of this in a nutshell, you need to understand that English and any other language, it's a social tool. It's not something that you can understand and apply in isolation of other people. And understanding that will make your learning experience a lot easier and also a lot more fun.
I think that's a great answer. Much more fleshed out than mine. Mine is crap now. By the way, I'm now on the second beer of beer.
I've got a fedora.
A nice bargain. Really, really good. Yeah, mine's going to sound very, very cliched and wide, but it's a fact when you, especially when you start speaking to like natives and you are an adult now, is relax. Like, stop stressing out so much. And I see people, they worry so much about the grammar, and it kind of stops them from speaking. They go like, yesterday I went to a park. And okay, it's perfect grammar, don't get me wrong. But those pauses and the frustration, the overcomplicating the grammar in your head, it breaks all fluency, and it makes it 10 times harder to understand. Now, someone said when they're first learning, yesterday I go park. Okay, it's not correct, but it's easier to understand. And when you're starting out, you need to just relax. You're going to make mistakes. It's as simple as that. That's why you're coming to classes. If you could speak perfectly with no mistakes, there's no reason for you to be here. And people need to accept that. I mean, most teachers are reasonably relaxed. They're not going to be shouting and screaming at you because you haven't pronounced something perfectly, or I mean, it gets frustrating when people make the same mistakes over and over again. Don't get me wrong. But just relax a little bit, enjoy it. It should be a process. And for me, the more people enjoy the classes, becoming friends with people in the group, connecting to the teacher, joking around, not taking it so seriously, make it a fun experience. It can be a wonderful social experience as well. I mean, it's harder and harder to meet people. And for me, that's how you should learn a language. Make it fun, make it enjoyable. I'm obviously talking about lower levels, where you were talking much more about you need a goal. What are you studying? Because there are so many different types of English. And there's parts of English I have no idea about. I remember before when someone wanted
that is a whole genre.
Oh.
I've got articles about it. I can send you some materials. But yeah, and this is one where actually, if you know French, it would actually be really useful because a lot of the aviation language comes from French quite almost directly, which again, that's culture. That's not because it's in the program. It's not like C++, it's not Java. Which is, we work with a lot of programmers, right? We work with a lot of people who code. So they treat spoken language, human language, the same way that they treat computer language, which is absolutely not the same. So, and also, you know, learning language is a good opportunity to be an anthropologist a little bit. My educational background's in sociology. I observe people. I observe what is valued and not valued in conversation, what's frequently said and what's not. And I feel like this is something that people miss. Again, I've had great students say, oh, I was watching TV and this character in some show said this. What does it mean? I don't understand it. It doesn't follow the rules I expected. And then without any context, I can usually fill in the gaps for them because I have the cultural background, right? And now they know that. They know that's how English works in some situation, which is a much more valuable service that we as native speakers can provide than saying, no, look in Murphy, it's chapter 8, idiot. You never need a teacher to tell you that. I know you can find the answer on Wikipedia or a search engine of your choice. You don't need us for that. What you can...
obsession with grammar here.
You know what's funny is that there are constructions in English that I don't necessarily know the names of technically, but I know how they work. So I often use the inverted structure of conditional sentences. So rather than saying, if I had $1 million, I would blah, blah, blah. I'd say, had I $1 million, I would blah, blah, blah. And the looks of consternation and confusion, because I say it all the time. I recommend it all the time in writing to use conditionals in inverted form because I don't think about it because I'm fluent. Right. I'm native. I see that in writing. I see it in, I hear it in speech, and people are like, well, I never saw that. Anna Pavlovna didn't tell me that. You're probably wrong. And I'm like, well, here's who's wrong. The person who can't be understood is wrong. And if you can't master some grammar structure, you can get around that if you think creatively. And if you observe what other people do and copy, you can solve your problem that way. But if you put all the pressure on yourself like you're being graded all the time, which you're not. I mean, you know, you and I at the pub are not speaking in complete sentences most of the time. We're speaking in fragments. I'll say, you know, with the thing and with the, you know, that was stupid, right? And then cheers.
That's really, really important. What you're saying there is like people speak too long sentences. And this is actually a term, if you know the term, it's called grammaring. Have you ever heard? And this is like understanding that different locations, relative with how well you know a person. So many different factors actually change the way you speak. Obviously, the big famous one is if you're on a train, if you're on a sap stand, someone comes along and says tickets. You know what he is saying. You've taken all the rest of the sentence in your head. Please show me your ticket so I can check that you're on the right path and you paid. You understand that because of the location, the repeated action. But if you was walking down Nevsky and someone came up to you and went, tickets, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. It's a crack. Yeah, like, what, is he buying tickets, selling tickets? What does he want? You have no idea. And that's something really, really important. I try to get my students to understand a little bit more. Is who you're talking to, where you are, is this a repeated action? Completely changes.
And is this a word that the other person can reasonably be expected to know? I think you showed me an essay the other day that had some word that looked like it was in French today, not like it was from French. And I was looking at the sentence and I was like, I have no idea what that means. And when you are confusing people who are proficient in English, something's gone wrong in your process. And it doesn't mean you're a bad student or it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that strategy of relying on one-to-one translation is failing you. I have a video about this, and students often ask me, they're like, I never hear people say thanks God in movies. And I'm like, because that's not the expression. It's thank God.
Yeah,
and they're like, but Slava Bogu. And I'm like, we're not speaking Russian. No one who speaks English is translating from Russian. you're doing that, and it's causing you problems.
My favorite is always sea pig. Like, yeah, I have a new sea pig. It's like, no, you don't.
I don't think you do.
Yes, I do.
Sounds, but that is a real animal, though, isn't it? A sea pig.
Yeah, it's like, it looks like, to crudely put it, like a pink condom.
Probably a Japanese delicacy.
That lives at the bottom of the sea.
Oh God!
Along with Lagoon duck.
But I mean, but these are opportunities to laugh, right? And students who don't laugh at these are really missing out. I think you've studied some Spanish. That one of the first things they tell you is "Yo soy embarazada" does not mean I'm embarrassed. It means I'm pregnant. Everyone who's ever taken Spanish knows this, and it's very funny. I think I took Spanish 5 years, didn't do very well, but I was in the class for 5 years. Every year, the teacher made some joke about this. And I will never forget it because the logic is clear. It's a false friend. And here's something I think is weird. What do you think about this? So for us, I mean, we're not fluent Russian users by any means. We can get by in Russia because so many words are just borrowed from modern English, like contemporary English. Now, France, every year, they have a whole committee that decides how to define new things because they don't want to borrow the word from English because they're French.
Yeah, I saw a report that like stop using like English gamer.
And
like,
I think about this, and I think part of what makes learning English difficult for Russians is probably the fact that there are so many of these neologisms and cognates that you can get by with the Russian version, but they never learn the collocations in English of the other language that goes with this stuff. And that leads to misunderstanding.
I mean, this is the whole idea that language is holistic, is all connected. You can't fragment it into these tiny, tiny little pieces. You will never fully understand it. By the way, guys, we've got roughly about 10, 15 minutes left. If you have any questions at all and you want us to answer, please put them in the chat and we'll go through it. Whilst you're thinking about some questions you'd like us to answer, one of my students, he's kept asking me, what else can he say instead of friend? And I come up with a big list off the internet.
Sure.
And I think we should go through it together. Dismiss all of these terrible...
You mean something bad was posted on the internet?
Can you believe that? Yeah, by the way, there's so much bad information on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you look, even on Google, stuff like that. Sometimes you look at the stuff and both of us, we look at it and go, no. Who says that? Cats and dogs, Couch Potato,
Lazy Bones.
So instead of friend, Lazy Bones, oh, what a Lazy Bones. Okay, the first one.
I think that's pretty popular in the UK and in Australia for sure. No.
In the US, no?
No.
No. So yeah, I mean, definitely in the UK, we'll say, yeah, you're right, mate. How are you? Next one, fella.
Maybe. I think maybe in the southern US, you're like, how you doing, fella?
Yeah, I can let this one slide, fella.
Yeah, it's okay, but maybe not something for younger people to use.
We have bud and
this
buddy.
Is more like dads would say this.
I fully leaned into it. I love saying, right. I am a dad.
Take full
advantage of that.
Like, oh, what's up, bud? My friend used to always say this to his little brother who was a lot younger. He was like, oh, you need help, bud? And I was like, this is babysitter language for me. But it's okay. Bud and Buddy are all right. Sheryl Crow's great song. All I Want to Do. She says, guy introduces himself as Bill, but I swear he's Bill or Billy or Mac or Buddy. So if it's endorsed in pop music, it's okay.
Yeah, that's a line. No,
absolutely not. This you would see in a 1990s cartoon where people are talking about surfers in California. But if you went up, could you imagine? Right, like, hello, dude and dudette. I am going on surfing here in Sunshine State, California. It is like Sochi, but Mexican. Where are you going, dudette? We do shots on beach. No, come back to the beach. It's just, it can be very problematic.
Do
Seems
and
okay.
like semi let it slide. It's kind of okay. Do that? No. This is like it's like stoner comedy. The language they use there.
And again, it's like you're really out of touch if you say this. Like if you're like, "What's up, dudes?" and "dudette." Okay, no.
It's like radical.
Like, are you Raphael from the Ninja Turtles? You're not. Then no, stop.
I mean, could you imagine going on a date?
Dudette?
You're right, Dudette. How are you? Like,
that's like it's most of my dates go anyway, but that's not because of language mistakes.
Now, the next one, lad and lassie. Northern for me, yeah. If you're like anywhere above sort of Birmingham, or even like Birmingham a little bit, I'd let that slide. We wouldn't say it in the southwest of England or the south of England. I'm guessing it's not.
There's the US dog named Lassie. That's it.
You're a lassie.
It sounds kind of like how a lot of my dates go, actually.
The next one, I would never say this. Friend. Hello, friend. That sounds
a little creepy
patronizing
as well.
And,
like it sounds like maybe you're trying to help a homeless person. You're like from a church. Hello, friend. Has the world been cruel to you? Join us this Sunday. Like it's no good. Yeah, exactly.
Do you know?
Well, that's something I don't miss about the U.S. If we go back to that.
I would never say friend. Yeah. Hello, friend. No. The next one, we definitely don't say this in the UK for sure. Amigo.
Again, if you're Matthew McConaughey, if you have just taken Spanish class for the first time, maybe, but it would have to be ironic. You couldn't sincerely say this. You would sound ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be kind of a joke. We have a question. What audience is a podcast for? I mean, level. We are not going to grade our speech. We're going to speak as much as we possibly can and as native. 2 Pints of English is about real English. Hopefully it'll be useful for every level, but be prepared for lots of advanced phrases and vocabulary because we're not going to speak like this so everybody can. We're going to speak as natural as you possibly can. Some nice.
Also, what's useful about hearing that kind of speech is that there will be lots of non-standard structures in there, and if you hear them again and again, you can go, oh, I actually don't need to be technically correct all of the time to convey that I'm a proficient English user.
Yep. Natives make mistakes all over the place. And one of the biggest ones for me is instead of saying, my friend and I went to the park.
Me and my friends, yeah, it just sounds more natural in many cases. It's definitely wrong. It's 100% wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely grammatically wrong. But yeah, every native speaker will speak like that. If he said, my friend and I, I'd be like,
it sounds.
Why are you speaking like this? Why are you being so formal?
What's funny is this another native error is once you learn the my friends and I construction, people will overcorrect and they'll always use it. They'll never use me properly. And they get in this embarrassing situation where they use this more formal, correct structure incorrectly, which looks so much worse than if you'd said something more casual or more informal or just grunted in an expressive way.
Yeah, I 100% are with you on that. Next one. Compadre. Definitely not in the UK.
Or if you're like a 110-year-old rancher in Texas, maybe. Otherwise, no.
Yeah.
All right, dudes and dudettes, compadres and amigos. It's time to take our cattle to market. Yeah.
The next one. Chum. No way. This would be like
if you're Bugs Bunny, you could say it. What's up, old buddy, old pal, old chum? But besides that, no.
This is what I've actually heard people say.
Oh my God.
Here in Russia. Collaborator.
Collaborator? Like someone just following orders in Auschwitz?
I would never, ever call
You
my friend
shouldn't
a
if you're a good
collaborator.
friend.
Hello, fellow collaborator.
Collaborate.
Oh. Yeah, so please, 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 anyone out
There's
there,
one word
don't say collaborator.
that
If it's someone you work friend, your colleague.
You can say the person you're talking to, your собеседник, is your interlocutor. That's a really good word. That's worth knowing. It's rather high level and it's useful. Oh, my collaborator. It's weird. I think the word colleague also is quite clear. It's someone you work with, the end. But I often hear it used improperly, not just by Russian users of English, but I think in general, because people don't know words like acquaintance or friend of a friend, or even, it sounds clunky, someone I know.
Yeah, but that's completely fine to say.
Yeah.
Don't say collaborator. Say a friend of a friend. Someone I know. That's completely much more natural. The next two is kind of problematic.
Okay.
And definitely we're never going to say it in the UK. Brother and sister.
Okay. This is definitely completely normal in African American vernacular English, also known as Black English or AAVE. Brother, I suppose you could say it if you're outside of that community, but this is a very close friend. This is a real intimate, be like, oh man, Lance and I have been in Russia for 7 years. He's my brother. Like, all right, makes sense.
And even
probably,
bro.
Sister, if you're maybe in a sorority, sister is a little bit more common if you're in one of these like societies, but if you want to show extreme closeness, but the level of intimacy that these terms would have make them like, you don't even need them because you're not going to have friends you're that close to.
Yeah. Please avoid that. The most part, at least. The next one, I have never heard of anyone ever use this. Hobnobber. You all right, hobnobber?
Gonna go with no. That sounds horrifying.
I just wanted to check just to make sure that maybe as a part of the US I missed that one.
Lucky to have missed out on. Well, we have this verb to hobnob, like to socialize, to rub shoulders with people, to try and network, make connections. It sounds rather pejorative, actually, to call someone a hobnobber. It sounds like an opportunistic kind of person, not a friend. Certainly not a friend.
I'm going back to the beginning of the podcast. A hobnob in England is a type of biscuit.
It's like you're criticizing your friend's food preferences. It'd be like, oh, here comes my friend. He's a real hobnobber. Just ignore him. He's going to get crumbs everywhere. He's my brother. They're like, he's your brother? But no, he's like a collaborator. You work with him? No. He's like, he's a collaborator.
There's quite a lot of biscuit and cookie talk here. Next one, again, I've never heard this. Musketeer.
So I heard that when Charles Dickens was writing Great Expectations, he was paid by the word. And if you've read Great Expectations, this book is maybe 25 to 30% longer than it needs to be. My friend always said Dickens was paid by the word, and it shows. And I feel that whoever wrote this list of synonyms for friend was also paid by the word. And
so that's clear.
Musketeer? Unless...
Yeah. I mean, you could check around, and if there's like 3 of you as a group, you say, yeah, we're like the Musketeers. But still, that's like when you're 8 years old. I would never.
If your friend is a sentient candy bar, perhaps. But yeah, outside of those 2 circumstances, absolutely not. Pal, sure.
I would actually say
pal is okay. We're pals.
Yeah, I think that's it. The next one I've added to it already is mucker, which is very southwest. This is purely Somerset only.
That's what I would say. I would say that sounds like it's from some specific part of England. It sounds like a dirty person to me because we've got muck, right? To mean like some kind of swampy or dirty place.
Yeah. Mucker is like very Somerset, like Friends. Now, there was one that I almost striked off the list. But I feel like it's important to make sure that nobody out there is saying it. And this is boy.
Yeah. If you have a friend, if you have a male who is your friend and he's a very close friend, you could say, this is my boy. Okay.
Yeah, but it's like the
yeah.
kind of like,
It's normal
my boy,
in
how are you?
internet slang. Women say this sometimes to talk about their boyfriends, like, this is my boy, this is my man. Outside of those contexts, this actually is extremely problematic to say. If you're interested in the history, this was a slur used against African American, against black people in the U.S. And if you're interested in the civil rights movement, you'll see photographs of protesters with signs that say, "I am a man." And this is both an articulation of their humanity and the fact that he's, to borrow a phrase from AAVE, they are grown-ass men. They're not boys. They're not children. It's not good. Is this still used in that kind of sense in London or in England in a pejorative sense? Much more civilized.
We've never used it that way.
I was called boy once in Texas, which was an interesting experience because this man was directing where I could put my car when I was on the way to teach his kid, but he's calling the teacher boy. But you need his help to teach your kid.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
The big lesson there is, if you're going to use this, very, very, very close friends. It's not strangers. You never go up to a stranger and say, "Boy, come here."
It's no good. What's interesting, though, is I think really old people might say this without any real prejudice. They'll be like, "Hey, boy, hey, girl, what time is it?" But again, they're very old people, and we're just waiting for them to die. So maybe don't follow their example.
We'll just let that racism slide for the next.
This is an interesting point, though, right? Because this word seems innocuous, but if you don't understand the cultural and historical context of some of these terms,
I mean, yeah, this is the thing. You have to be careful of language in some ways because it can be so offensive using the wrong one. This was something very interesting what I found when I moved to Russia. Russia is a very, very direct language. I mean, in the UK, we never say the word no. Well, of course we do, but for example, if you said, "Do you want to go to the cinema next week?" and I didn't want to go, I'm not going to go, "No." Where a Russian person say, "No, I don't want to go." In my head, it's like, what have I done to offend you? Does he hate me? Have I upset him? I'll be thinking the whole night, like, have I done something wrong? We would always say, like, "Oh, that sounds lovely, but I can't make it," or maybe another time, or I will never be so straight to
that
say
politeness in context. It's so interesting because I think the English are very famous for this. And Americans' reputation for indirectness is a little more mixed because on the one hand, business people, New Yorkers, Wall Street types, very direct, right? But Russians have often expressed annoyance at the whole phenomenon of small talk, which is, I think Americans are quite notorious for. People will talk to you when they really don't have to. This conversation does not need to happen. But perhaps, and I'm just spitballing here, the use of small talk is to just let people know, like, you're okay. You're a socially well-adjusted person. You are neutral. You can be friendly. You're not a threat. And again, because of the guns, it's a good idea to start with small talk to let people know you're not.
Again, that's one of the big differences.
You don't have it. You don't need that. That's not a part of it.
We don't have guns. Yeah, it freaked me out even when I first came here and saw police officers with guns. I would be terrified in the US.
Police, civilians. In Texas, one time I finished a lesson with a kid, and he said, "Do you want to see our gun safe?" And English is a living language. You learn new things all the time. I said, "You're what? I don't know what those words mean together." And it was like a closet that was filled not just with guns, but with other weapons, like throwing stars, like a ninja would have.
I mean, I thought this was like a cliche about the guns in the US until, well, we both worked with.
Do you want to set this one up for the audience?
I remember him showing me pictures of his gun collection on his phone, like children.
He didn't have kids, but he did have guns. He had a lot of them.
Look at this one. Yeah, I was like, whoa, this is mental. Like, why? It's something I'll never get around, basically. Guys and girls, we've got just a few minutes left. If there's any questions you'd like for us to answer, please let us know. It could be about English or just life in general. It could be about country.
I had a great moment in class the other day. Someone asked me if I ever just meditated or fell asleep while my students were writing. And I said, no, that's actually the last time I would ever feel so relaxed, because seeing people be creative actually gives me energy. It actually inspires me to maybe write something myself, or to, you know, jump in there and provide guidance or corrections or something. And one of my students reacted really positively to that. And I thought, you know, that is, again, in a nutshell, the second time I've used that expression, that's the value of teaching. It's not for me to just transfer my knowledge to someone else. My knowledge came from books and experience. You can get half of that without me. But when I can help you create something, put something new into the world, that is an amazing experience. And some of my students, my advanced ones, have written really, really funny, really interesting, really beautiful, really thought-provoking pieces in English. And I'm there to help generate ideas, maybe massage some of the grammar, maybe to inspire, you know. But at the end of the day, what a teacher does, a teacher of language, a teacher of anything, what they're doing is helping human beings achieve their potential. And it's a beautiful vocation to have. It's a great privilege to be able to interact with that. So if you're worried about grammar, you've got Murphy. But if you want to make art, you could have me.
Yeah. I 100% am behind you on that. Most of grammar can be learned self-taught, don't get me wrong. But if there's some confusion, some complex phrases, complex structures, check with your teacher. Go for the best way around it. Can I ask, what is the best way to learn the live vocabulary which natives actually use? Can we trust Oxford, Cambridge, etc. books? For
IELTS, yes. For IELTS, you absolutely can trust the authentic materials that Cambridge presents. For spoken English, I would say yes, with a caveat. You need to understand who you're talking to. So business English is quite different from regular English. I know what KPI is, and that's it. I don't really know anything else in this genre. I'm done. I'm a news guy. I read the news a lot. I read literature. The English there is quite different from what you might get at a pub in England or a bar in the US. So depending on your purpose, different sources have different levels of trustworthiness. So yeah, if you're preparing for a test, the official materials are absolutely valid. Materials for those tests that are not official deserve more skepticism.
Something you said about the news is something I always recommend for sort of stronger students and for really picking up some really advanced vocabulary and phrases is the news. And they always say to me, I'm not in politics. But the news isn't just politics. You can look at the science sections. You can look at... There's so many different parts. You can always find something you're interested in. Whether it's music, theatre, cinema, games, you can technology. Look at that part of the news and pull out this amazing, amazing language. It's so rich. This might seem kind of odd, but if you really want to focus on the social language and the real language that's spoken in this country, is to look at stand-up comedians. Because they never grade their speech. They are full of idioms and phrasal verbs and all these subtleties and metaphors. And that's a real sort of language there is with stand-up comedians. It might not seem like the best place to learn English, but
do you use stand-up in your lessons ever?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I'll use stand-up. I had one about museums and how England basically robbed the world. And... James Acaster has a wonderful little sketch about this.
Is that an English
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I'll post it on.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I use there's a great bit from Bill Burr where he talks about the heroism of soldiers, and there's one joke I actually didn't quite get when I watched him talking. I understood everything that he said about the military and hero worship and America and all these things. But there's one joke where he says, you know, is the guy pointing to the battlefield a hero, right? Like that's the whole joke, is that the soldiers who do the dangerous things, they fly the aircraft, the missions, but there's literally a guy on the aircraft carrier who points to where the war is. And he says, you know, this guy, he's pointing like he's doing Warrior One, and I had no idea what that was. Well, it's a yoga pose. And knowing that, I think, oh, well, maybe as an English teacher, as an English user, I should become more familiar with yoga poses because they're actually quite common in daily discourse. If people are like, oh, no, I dropped my pen, I have to pick it up. Well, that's my downward dog for the day. That would make zero sense if you didn't know that was a yoga pose. Those words together, plus a dictionary, plus your very highly evolved Homo sapien brain would never, ever make sense.
Yeah, I really like when people get a bit creative and have this kind of like little metaphors. English is actually very flexible. You can play around and you get a lot of fun. We have a question here. Do you have a favorite source for news? For me,
Guardian's a great source. I use them a lot for British source. I can highly recommend. Although I think you might need a VPN for it these days. There's a wonderful website called artsandlettersdaily.com, ALdaily.com. I've been reading this website since I was 15 years old. It is a collection of like the best pieces on science, literature, the news, etc. And it has lots of different perspectives. And it's probably my favorite place to go. If I have an afternoon free, I'll go there. I'll download a bunch of pieces and I'll read that. Arts and Letters Daily is one. BBC is a great source. They also have a Russian edition. So,
I mean, BBC for me is like good for like upper intermediate, getting touching advanced. They have simplified their language a little bit. This was something I noticed about American newspapers as well. I paid subscriptions, or like signed up for subscriptions in New Yorker and stuff like that. I was massively disappointed by the language. I was like, this is really
the New
really
Yorker. You thought that's interesting.
Yeah, I had a few articles there, and it was like very, very. I don't know. I mean, the Guardian, the Independent, they seem much stronger.
They make up for complexity really and length because New Yorker.
Yeah, they are. I remember I was in hospital once. He sent me one about the giant squid, and I spent about 6 hours reading it.
But let me think. What else is worth reading? Also, the Associated Press is a great news source. APnews.com. It's very kind of neutral. It's not political content. It's not biased in any way. I have a lot to say actually about the news. We could do a whole session about that because I think media literacy is really important. And here's a true story. When I left Russia the first time in 2005, I thought, you know what, I didn't learn all of Russian. There's a lot more to learn. I'm going to start reading stories, but I didn't know what publications to trust. I didn't know about Dost at the time, but I knew the big names. So I knew like Kommersant, and I just downloaded an article from there. And you would never in a million years guess what the article was. It was, is Gisele Bündchen a hermaphrodite?
I thought it was going to be poop related.
So I'm sitting there with my dictionary, and I'm trying to read this article, and I'm like, oh, hermaphrodite. Really? Do I need this? Like Harry Potter? Is this worth learning? And I translated the article, like I read the whole thing. It was stupid, But if I had read that article 30 times, would that help me communicate in Russia? Probably not. But if you read enough news about things like weather, transport, the things that work, economics, business, this is the language. This is what people talk about.
There's so many good sources out there that people just don't utilize because they dismiss news as politics. It's like, no, it doesn't have to. We got one more question. We'll fit in the last one. I was also wondering how bad, or even if it's bad, when your accent is not quite British or American. Not bad. Not bad at all. It is 10 times better to sound neutral, and even with a Russian accent, than sounding posh. Something that people don't understand is, especially this, like, I'm always against RP. Fighting RP.
Right.
It drives me insane. Because people hate it in the UK. We hate this elitist accent. Basically, if you're speaking like that, it's like, I'm a rich person, I know better than you. You speak like that, people will not want to speak to you in the UK. You go to a pub and you're like, oh, excuse me, sir, would you please give me a pint of the finest beer? Nobody was going to want to interact with you. And it's a wonderful place. You can speak to so many people. Speak how you speak, how it feels natural to you. Speak with your accent. Stop wasting so much time on... I mean, pronunciation is fantastic, don't get me wrong. But learn English first. Learn all these wonderful phrases, fantastic collocations, these awesome idioms, a way you can construct and play around with it, get a feel for it before you spend a huge amount of money at a pre-intermediate level focusing on pronunciation to sound like some kind of Tory
I was
twat.
wondering what the language barrier was here today for requirements. All right, it's quite low. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I would say in America, the kind of neutral accent that I have it's fine, but no one's excited about it. In America, people actually quite like Southern accents. A lot of women think the Southern accent is sexy. I want a Southern boy to treat me like a lady, you know? But what I was like, does anyone teach that accent? I don't think anyone outside of the U.S. learns that accent. But in America, that one's actually kind of trendy. You know, does anybody learn to talk like JFK, who is considered one of our great communicators? No, but it would be cool if you did, right?
But just RP is like saturated, like whole sort of a...
Could you imagine though if someone was kind of like,
please,
me, how do I get to the platform to get to Hogwarts? Like, I have no idea what you just said. You'd be like, these are Russians? Like, yeah, like who taught these people?
Every other native stood around them like, what is going on here? Anyway, it is...
Have we? Oh my God.
We've actually gone...
I haven't even finished this.
Hopefully, the beer is drained. It's finished. We've had our 2 pints.
St. Petersburg.
Guys and girls, for everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this. Please, if you're not already, check out Sam's page. He's a fantastic teacher with some wonderful comments, content.
It happens.
I make mistakes all the time. Here is his Instagram.
That's me. And of course, you all know Lance Pro English. He spent his entire life speaking this language, and the last 7 refining it to make sure that Russians can meet their goals and get to where they want to go. I guess I could even say I kind of taught you, not everything, but some of what you know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, originally, when I was first learning, I learned more from watching Sam's lessons than I ever did in the Celtic course.
My jokes were better.
Exactly. You showed me to have fun in the classroom, make it enjoyable, and that's what language is about. Have fun learning the language. Don't make it a chore. Have a good time. Anyway, hopefully we're going to invite Sam back on the show.
I'd be honored. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been great to, It
was a nice way to kick it off. So, yeah, episode 1, 2 pints of English, done. So, anyway, guys and girls, have a lovely evening.
Great.
We'll see you all in the future.
Cheers to everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Bye for now.